Tony Santo here with my first impressions of the Intrepid Camera Company's 8x10 Mark II large format camera that is inexpensive and very lightweight. Prior to sharing my thoughts with you on this camera, I'd like to make two preemptive statements. And number one is that in this modern day era of digital technology at the forefront of the consumer market, I believe that it is truly extraordinary and unique that the Intrepid Camera Company even exists, especially producing a product that many would consider antiquated technology. So I applaud the efforts by the Intrepid Camera Company to produce a brand new product that is very reasonably priced for all of us to use and enjoy. I think that's absolutely wonderful. The second statement that I'd like to make is that I did receive a 20% discount to purchase this camera as an incentive. However, the important part here is that I'm not going to hold back any criticism or negative thoughts about this camera because I believe in being forthright and truthful about my experience with the Intrepid Camera Company. And hopefully this will be viewed not as bashing the product, but as constructive feedback to help improve the product and to make the consumer a little bit aware about some of the quirks of using this camera, just like you would with any other camera. In the end, I want the Intrepid Camera Company to succeed and continue to provide us with many innovative products like this lightweight 8x10 view camera. I think it's absolutely critical to the survival of large format photography. Let's take a look at the bottom of the camera to start off with. We have the Intrepid Camera logo on the bottom here, which is nice, with 1/4 inch and 3/8 holes for a variety of mounting options for base plates. What I really like about the camera, other than weighing only 2.7 kilograms, which is what my copy weighs, is that this has a very small footprint. When you compare this with my Zone 6 view camera, there's an appreciable difference between the size, especially when you consider the knob sticking out from the camera. The Intrepid Camera Company has done a really good job of keeping everything compact, which takes up less space in your backpack. Once you get your base plate on the bottom of your camera, then you can mount the camera to a tripod. To unfold the camera, you're simply going to loosen up 4 knobs, 2 on either side of the rear standard, and it's going to unfold like this. I want to point out that there are these detents on both of the rails on either side of the rear standard that allow you to find the 0 position very, very quickly. And the 0 position basically is just where the rear standard is perpendicular to the focus bed, so it makes a 90-degree angle here at the corner. For the front standard, that's really simple. All you have to do is lift it out of position. It's floating around in there loose. There are 5 screw holes that the front standard screw will mount into, and the way that you judge which one you want to use is based on the focal length of the lens that you're using. So for just demonstration purposes here, I'm going to screw this right into the front one here, and then we can talk about all the different camera movements that this camera features. So let's talk about the front standard movements that this camera has to offer. It has front shift, left and right. It has front swing. It has rise, fall. It also has forward tilt and backward tilt. One of the features that I really love that Intrepid built into this camera is the independent control of the rise and fall from the forward tilt and the backward tilt. So if I wanted to have extreme rise, for example, I can lock that down into place and not have the lens drop all the way down to the focusing bed, which with a really heavy lens that can happen. And on my Zone 6 camera, it's really frustrating when I'm trying to adjust the lens tilt when the lens drops down to the focusing bed. So it's really nice to be able to apply the forward tilt that you want and just lock it into place without having to worry about that front standard coming crashing down onto the focusing bed. As far as lens boards are concerned, the camera uses a standard 5.5 inch by 5.5 inch size opening. That's standard for Sinar type lens boards. So I'm going to use an example here. This lens board adapter to show you how it attaches. It uses a fixed bar at the bottom and a sliding bar at the top to lock it into place. So I'm going to slide that into the groove and then slide that bar right down over the lens board adapter to lock it into place. Now this is a lens board adapter that I got from the Intrepid Camera Company that accepts the Linhoff Technica style lens boards. And I initially thought it would accept some of my Zone 6 lens boards, which are 4 by 4 inches, but the Linhoff Technica are a little bit smaller on 2 of the sides. So I can show you how to put this in. It's very similar to a lens board adapter. You just slip it into the groove, slide the bar over, and the lens is locked into place. The camera does come with some bubble levels at the front standard as well as the rear standard. However, the honest truth is I really don't use those. I prefer to use an external level like this one that I then place on the camera to make sure that the camera is nice and level. As far as rear standard movements are concerned, there's only one that you could do, and that is tilt. To engage that mechanism, you need to loosen up the knobs that you use to unfold the camera. And then if you're in a detent position, what you have to do is push these bars forward so that you disengage those detents, and then you can use forward tilt or backward tilt to adjust the image however you like. Now some cameras do come with rear swing, rear rise and fall. My Zone 6 camera has rear swing, but I can honestly only think of maybe 1 or 2 occasions where I've used rear swing to throw something out of focus. The bulk of the time I am using that back tilt or forward tilt in order to achieve the desired results in my landscape photography. So I typically don't try to throw things out of focus very often. So having any other kinds of movements or even to adjust the rise and fall really doesn't make sense for someone like me, and I'm not going to miss that feature one bit. This is perfect just the way it is. I'll take the lightweight size in exchange for that rear swing movement any day of the week. To focus the camera is really easy. You select what hole you're going to place your front standard into, depending upon the lens that you're using, the focal length. So you want to get roughly in that ballpark. This way you don't have to move the focusing bed too much to get the image in fine focus. So once you have that determined, it's really easy. You just use this knob back here. You turn it counterclockwise, and what happens is that focusing bed ratchets outward. The action of the focusing bed is really smooth and very nice. I have no complaints with focusing this camera. It's actually, in my opinion, a little bit easier than my Zone 6 camera to focus. As far as the ground glass is concerned, it's a standard issue ground glass. It's equivalent in brightness to my Zone 6 camera. It's not particularly bright or notably bright. You can purchase Fresnel screens to make them a little bit brighter. And there's even some fancier ground glass setups that you can purchase and then adapt to fit in the back of the camera. But I wouldn't really expect too much out of this ground glass. It's a standard issue ground glass that, especially if you're using some slower lenses like an f8 or an f11, it's challenging to see, particularly in dim lit conditions. So at sunrise, when you're getting there before the sun comes up, it's still dark out and you're trying to set up, it's a challenge. And that's just something that you have to figure out for yourself and work around and get used to. There are some nice features on this ground glass. There are horizontal and vertical lines, so you can line things up nicely. There are some crosshairs in the center, so you can find the center of the image. They've even gone as far as to place their name here across the bottom. It says Intrepid 8x10 camera, which is also nice. The only thing that I wish that they would work on a little bit is the cutting of the glass. In the corners, they tend to be a little rough. There are some sharp edges there that I'm not really comfortable with. It's purely an aesthetic thing. It has nothing to do with the functionality of the ground glass, but that would be nice if they could find a better way to smooth out those edges and cut their ground glass. One of the areas that I feel like could be improved a little bit is the points of contact with the ground glass and this back. There are only 4 areas where that ground glass is touching along the edge here. I'm not sure why they routed out the material in between those sections. Perhaps it's to save weight, but it would be nice to have that solid all the way around. Because right now, if you were to push on the corners here, you can actually watch the ground glass flex a little bit. And that's a little concerning to me, because if you push on that a little too hard, you could break the ground glass. And it's thin glass, it's easily breakable, so it just would be nice to have a little bit more substance behind that ground glass to prevent breakage. To To switch from a horizontal position to a vertical position is quite easy. You just flip up these levers and you pull on the back, which disengages these magnets that are on the back of this film holder back, which is really a unique feature. I don't think I've ever seen having these magnets on the back of a camera to make sure that you actually lock the film back onto the camera in place. And it's really nice because it just snaps into place. It takes the guesswork out of whether or not you've got that back into the camera, holds it nicely into place so it minimizes the risk of dropping down to the floor and breaking your ground glass when you're in the field. And then you simply put the safety locks down and you're ready to shoot. So I really like that feature about this camera. Typically, to put a film holder in the camera, you would simply lift the ground glass and slide your film holder into place, and it falls right into the groove. But when I first got this camera, it didn't do that, and I only through experimentation figured out how to solve that problem. So there's some modifications that I've done to the back that I'll show you. So there are a couple of spares here that I have that I wasn't intending on having, but because of some issues that I was having with this back, Intrepid was kind enough to send out some backs. And one of the issues I was having initially was the groove that sits behind the ground glass here was actually shifted inward a little bit, and it should have been outward, which wasn't allowing the film holder to seat properly. So what would happen is that the film holder would pull out of the camera. So if you're trying to pull the dark slide out, you could actually pull the entire film holder out, which would then expose your film to light unintentionally. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to replicate this here, but I'll see if I can show this to you. When you try and slide this in, it doesn't seat properly in that groove. And initially I thought maybe the groove, other than having to move over, if you simply widened it, it would help out. But one of the things that most large format cameras have that Intrepid did not include on these versions of the camera is a tapering, a 45-degree tapering of the edge here, which I went ahead on my table saw and I placed a 45-degree angle there. And that angle actually is very important because it makes it easier to slide the film holder in so that it doesn't catch on the groove that's supposed to fit into that slot that I'm talking about. So by placing that, that actually corrected my issue of the slot not fitting into that groove and sliding out. I've seen other YouTubers where they've talked about light leaks and that they have to squeeze the back of the camera in order to get the film holder to seat properly. And in all my years of shooting large format and different types of large format cameras, I've never had to do that before. And so that was really different for me. And the simple solution is to really just, and you can see it's really tight now, and it's hard to get out of the camera, which is a good thing. But the simple solution is just to cut 45-degree angles on the back here so that this groove does not hit the flat surface of that where the ground glass is located. And so by doing so, that film holder just slips right into that groove. So that is something that I think the Intrepid Camera Company could easily do and incorporate into their cameras. Now the other thing that is kind of a little bit of an annoyance that I solved by putting some screws in here is if you pull back on this ground glass, you see what happens. The spring mechanism slides right over that ground glass holder. And that over time wears down the wood here. In fact, there's a little bit of a chip there from that happening several times to me. And that will wear it down and of course then cause failure of the ground glass holder. So what I did to fix that was I drilled some holes that are slotted so that when you lift this back of the ground glass up, there's movement in the spring mechanism here, but that screw is holding this spring mechanism in place so that the spring mechanism doesn't slip off of that and then the ground glass goes flying out. That's a really annoying thing that is easily fixed by simply slotting the ground glass, or the spring back mechanism, excuse me, with some long elongated holes and then putting a screw into the ground glass. I mean, if they've gone ahead and they've attached everything else nicely with some threaded barb and then some screws, I don't see why they couldn't add that here as well to prevent that from happening. I mean, you can see that with that opening, that's more than plenty to slip a film holder in. So I think that's something that the Intrepid Camera Company could easily incorporate into the back of the camera. As far as the build quality of this camera is concerned, it has a lot of fantastic parts on it. The bottom of the camera is this anodized aluminum. It's really nice. It's machined well. The knobs are machined well. All these parts are very nicely done. The focusing bed is fantastic. You know, the front standard and the rear standard, the plywood. You know, plywood's stable. It's cheap. I'm not sure how this is going to hold up in the long term, but it's nice. It's a nice camera. The bellows are nicely made. They feel, you know, nicely put together. They don't feel like they're going to rip or anything like that. It feels like a tough material, kind of like a coated paper of some sort. It's really nice. I'm very happy with the build quality, and the best part about this camera, again, despite anything negative that I've said, it only weighs 2.7 kilograms. The next best option is to go to something like the Chamonix, which costs over $4,000. This is a bargain for what you get out of this camera, and it's the main reason why I went for this camera, is because it's so inexpensive and it has a lot of great features. So going on a really long hike like the subway, going out for 8 miles, 10 mile, whatever the case may be, this is the camera to take, simply because it's lightweight and it packs a whole bunch of features, and it's relatively compact for an 8x10 camera. So I would highly recommend that if you want to get into 8x10 large format photography or even 4x5 photography, the most inexpensive way to do that really is to go with an Intrepid camera. And the way that this particular model is put together, I'm really happy with the build quality. I don't think that spending, you know, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on a large format camera is going to get me any more than what this camera gives me. I don't know what the long-term durability of this camera is going to be, but I'm looking forward to finding out, and I've been enjoying shooting this. I've been to 2 locations so far with it, and it's been great to have in my camera bag and to pull out and to use. It's very easy to use. It's intuitive, very well designed. I really appreciate this camera. One of the things that I might consider is actually painting the inside of these areas black. And that's just to absorb any internal reflections that are happening inside the camera, to minimize any fogging of the film. I haven't had any issues to date with this, but it's just nice, it's reassuring to have those areas painted black, as well as the ground glass film holder portion of the camera. Intrepid Camera Company has worked with me very, very closely. They want to make me a satisfied customer, and as I mentioned, they sent out, you know, 2 additional backs. Eventually, I just requested a whole new camera because of some of the issues that I've talked about in this video, and I felt like weren't being fixed with sending out new backs. It just wasn't up to the standards that I expected. And so they were kind enough to send me a new camera, but if you're wondering why my camera has black bellows now instead of the red bellows, because in my unboxing video I had a red bellows camera, it's because they sent me a black bellows camera instead, which is fine. I like the black bellows, but they were kind enough to actually send me another red bellows. And the red bellows actually comes almost like a half a camera here. Because of the way this is attached, they weren't comfortable with just sending me the bellows. They actually sent me literally the rear standard and the front standard, which is amazing. That's great from a customer standpoint, and I appreciate it greatly, but the problem that I see from a business perspective is if other customers are having similar issues and they're continually sending out parts of cameras, that's going to eat away at their profits. And that concerns me from the standpoint that I don't want to see the Intrepid Camera Company disappear. I want them to be successful. And so I think that if they took a little time, step back a little bit, look at their production, and improve some of these issues that at least I've experienced and perhaps others are experiencing, that they'll tighten up their production costs and maximize their profits so that they're here with us for the long term, which is what I'm hopeful for. As far as customer service is concerned, like I said, they're great. The only thing that I wish initially when I purchased the camera that I would have liked to have seen is a little bit more communication as to the delivery date. I was initially told about 3 months. However, I had to stop and email Intrepid Camera Company and find out, hey, where are you guys at with the production? And you know, the reply back was, we're a little bit slow, we're behind, and we don't want to, ironically, have any quality issues. Well, I got my camera and I had these issues, and like I said, they worked through all these issues with me. However, that communication would have been nice to say, hey, you know, just by the way, your camera is at this stage of the game, and you should expect it, you know, in another month or something like that. We've got a bit of a delay because of so many orders that we received. So that would have been nice to have that kind of communication along the way. So if they could improve that, I think it's going to go a long way as far as their customer base is concerned. Well, I just wanted to take a moment and thank you all for watching. If you do like this video, please give it the thumbs up. Please subscribe if you're new to this channel. And please consider leaving a comment below and sharing your thoughts. Maybe you own the Intrepid camera, whether it's 4x5 or 8x10. Please leave a comment below. And perhaps even consider donating $1 or $2 to help me keep producing these videos and buying some film and trying some new things in my large format photography adventure. So as always, thanks for watching.